She said she would welcome me like a daughter. On my wedding day, I realized that she had always seen me as an intruder. My name is Livia Martins. I am 29 years old, and I have always believed in love. I say this because, even though I come from a simple family, with a mother who is a seamstress and a father who is a truck driver, I never let the cynicism of the world stop me from dreaming of something pure. Maybe that's why, when I met Rodrigo, I believed, with all the strength I had left, that he was my happily ever after. Rodrigo was everything that made me believe that God had a plan for me. He was intelligent, kind, successful, and most importantly, he loved me unconditionally. We dated for 3 years of respect, affection, complicity, until he proposed. And that's when she showed up. Donna Helena, my future mother-in-law, the matriarch of the Montero family, her face frozen in a calculated smile, her eyes analyzing me as if my every move were a direct threat to her dynasty. At first, she hid it well. She said she was happy that Rodrigo had chosen me, but it was always with that happy in quotation marks, that tone you only recognize after you've already been hurt. I remember the first time she complimented me. "You're very hardworking. It must have been difficult to get here with the opportunities you've had, right?" I laughed. I laughed like someone swallowing barbs. Rodrigo didn't notice. He never did. The wedding was set for a sunny Saturday in November. Rodrigo insisted on something big and elegant with a 5-course meal, live musicians, and a guest list that looked more like a social convention than a celebration of love. But I accepted. For him. During the preparations, Donna Helena's presence was constant and suffocating. She said she wanted to help, but deep down, she wanted to control everything. She criticized the flowers I chose, the color of the decorations, even the dress my mother had sewn with so much love. "That looks like a June festival outfit, doesn't it, Rodrigo?" she said at one of the fittings, in front of me and my mother. I held back the tears so hard that I almost drowned inside. "Rodrigo?" He just laughed. He said that was just how she was, that deep down she loved me. But there was something in her eyes, something that told me that the worst was yet to come. And I wasn't wrong. The sabotage started slowly, subtly, and it grew. The week of the wedding, the florist canceled without warning. The flower girl's dress disappeared. The caterer claimed there was a problem with the date. And the day before the ceremony, my makeup was mysteriously changed by a completely different professional, sent by Helena herself. On the morning of the wedding, I walked into the hall feeling incomplete, tired, humiliated, and yet ready to love. But nothing prepared me for what she did during the ceremony. At the altar, in front of everyone, when the priest asked if anyone had any objections to the marriage, she was the one who raised her hand, and what she said destroyed me inside. But that, I'll tell you in the next part. Her voice cut through the silence of the church like a sharp blade. A murmur ran through the pews like nervous waves. For a second, everyone thought it was a joke. But Donna Helena's frozen gaze left no doubt. This was real. I stood there, in shock, in front of the altar. The bouquet trembled in my hands. Rodrigo stood motionless, looking at his mother as if she had gone mad. The priest stammered, politely asking if she had something serious to say. And that's when she began. "This girl here, this Livia, she is not who she says she is," she began, projecting her voice as if she had rehearsed that speech 1,000 times. "She lied about her family, about her origins, and what's more, she's had her eye on Rodrigo's money from the beginning." I heard a collective "oh" from the audience. I couldn't breathe. The shame burned my skin like fire. "You didn't tell him, did you?" she said, turning to me with a venomous smile. "That your mother spent years in prison for theft? That your father has been missing for almost a decade? That you grew up in a neighborhood where even the police avoid going? The reality is that my mother was wrongfully imprisoned because of a boss who falsely accused her of theft, something we were able to prove, and she was released. But that, of course, Helena didn't mention. She only brought up the blood, not the truth." Rodrigo shook his head in denial, looking at me as if waiting for confirmation. But the damage was already done. The cameras were rolling, the guests were whispering, my heart was imploding. "And you allowed this, Rodrigo?" she said dramatically. "You allowed this woman to tarnish our family name with this charade?" There, in front of hundreds of people, I felt naked, expelled from my own party. The dress my mother had sewn seemed to weigh a ton, and the flowers, which Helena had replaced at the last minute, smelled of falsehood. Rodrigo said nothing. Not a word. He just lowered his eyes, and his silence screamed louder than anything Helena could have done. The ceremony did not continue. The priest withdrew, embarrassed. The guests began to disperse, and I left through the side of the church, my veil dragging on the floor and my face wet with tears. I remember seeing my mother crying, hugging my younger brother, saying, "Daughter, don't let this destroy you. You're not what she said. You never were." But I was already broken. Rodrigo came to me hours later, in the hotel room where I had taken refuge, with a bouquet in his hands and a defeated expression. "I didn't know she was going to do that." "But you didn't defend me," I replied, my voice dry. "You just stood there, as if... maybe you believed her." He apologized. He said he loved me, that we could try again, get married differently, on another date. In secret, if I preferred. He said he could work something out. But I already knew. I knew that the woman who destroyed my marriage would never pay for it, unless someone made her pay. And in that room, in silence, with my heart in ruins, that was where the seed of my revenge was born. She destroyed me in front of everyone. Now I would bring her down, without anyone suspecting a thing. And the stage for that would be the honeymoon. The next day, the hotel ballroom still bore the traces of what was supposed to be my wedding. Crushed petals on the floor, half-full glasses in the corners of the tables, uncollected party favors with my name engraved in gold. What was left there was not an unfinished party. It was a graveyard of my dreams. I stayed in that hotel room for 2 days. Door locked, phone off. The world outside kept turning, but inside me, everything had stopped. What hurt wasn't just the exposure. It was the betrayal, the complicit silence of those who said they loved me. Rodrigo came back twice, begging for a conversation, but there was something in his eyes, a weight. He didn't really believe his mother, but he also didn't trust me enough to defend her publicly. For me, that was already a choice. On the 3rd day, I decided to leave. I needed to see my mother. She hugged me with the strength of someone bringing a daughter back from the depths of despair. She said she knew me, that no resentful words from a mother-in-law could erase the woman she helped raise. But I saw the pain in her eyes. She blamed herself, for her simplicity, for her unprestigious surname, for not being able to protect me. Social media exploded. Images of the interrupted Montero wedding went viral in São Paulo's high society gossip groups. Bride exposed by mother-in-law at the altar. Cruel comments. Theories. People who had never seen me speaking with certainty about who I was. Companies that had hired me as a freelance architect began to cancel meetings. One of them was blunt. "We don't want to be associated with this kind of scandal." As if I were a criminal or a gold digger, I became persona non grata. Rodrigo? He did what any obedient son from a wealthy family would do. He backed off. He said he needed some time, that things were very confusing. He wasn't going to pick a fight with his mother. Not for me. I found myself alone. No party. No husband. No steady job. And my name was no longer clean. But there was something no one knew about me. I'm not the type to bleed in silence. I'm the type who cleans up the blood, hides the knife, and smiles while waiting for the right moment. It was during this period that I had my first sleepless night. Not from pain, but from calculation. I remembered everything Helena had done. The paid saboteurs, the fake emails, the anonymous phone calls, my mother's information. How did she get access to all that? A woman who publicly destroys another woman with such precision makes one mistake. She reveals what she is capable of. And that's all someone like me needs. I started where all good revenge begins. Listening, observing, cataloging. And soon, an opportunity fell into my lap like a gift from the gods. The honeymoon was still paid for, and Helena insisted that Rodrigo not cancel it. Go with her, and decide there if you still want to get married. I said it like someone throwing bait. She thought that was the stage for the end. Little did she know, it would be the stage for her downfall. And I already knew how to turn it into a spectacle. The honeymoon was paid for, 7 nights at a 5-star resort in Punta Cana. A room with a sea view, welcome champagne, and a butler at our disposal. Everything was booked under the surname Montero, paid for by Helena herself, who made a point of showing everyone how generous she was. She had no idea what a gift she was giving me. Rodrigo called me a few days after the scandal. He said he wanted to talk, that maybe some time together would help put things back in place, that his mother didn't want to interfere anymore. He sounded tired. The sparkle in his eyes was gone. All that was left was a broken man torn between two loyalties. I accepted. But he didn't know that this trip wasn't about reconciliation. It was about me tearing down the empire his mother had built with lies. Before traveling, I prepared myself. First, I combed through Helena's connections. I used old contacts, ignored emails, deleted files that I recovered with the help of a hacker friend who owed me favors. I discovered that Helena had hidden assets, much of it in the names of third parties, including one of the family drivers and an old nanny from Rodrigo's childhood. Money laundering? Tax evasion? Maybe. It was too early to say, but there was something there. Then I approached an investigative journalist who had done a series on powerful families who exploited the system to hide their fortunes. I gave her what little I had. She was interested. She said that with a little more evidence, it could become a major news story. But I needed access. And that was exactly what the honeymoon would give me. Unrestricted access to Rodrigo. And, by extension, to his mother's personal network. When we arrived at the resort, it was like something out of a movie. The sea sparkled crystal blue. The staff welcomed us with chilled glasses of sparkling wine. And Rodrigo seemed relieved. "I'm glad you agreed to come, Livia," he said. "I think that away from everything, we can understand what still exists between us." I smiled, falsely. "I think so too, love." That night, we had dinner by candlelight. He seemed emotionally exhausted. I took advantage of every word he said to map out his vulnerabilities. He talked about his childhood, his relationship with his deceased father, how his mother had always been too strong, controlling, demanding. Precious confessions that I kept like gold nuggets. And when he fell asleep after a few glasses of wine, I unlocked his phone with his sleeping face on the screen and had access to everything. Conversations with his mother, audio messages, archived messages, even a secret family group where I was treated like a scam project. In one of the messages, days before the wedding, Helena wrote, "She's going to fall at the altar. She'll learn that this world isn't for everyone. And as a bonus, she'll be out of our lives." I felt anger. But I also felt something else. Power. That was the moment when the girl who had been humiliated in front of everyone began to transform into the woman who would tear off masks and rewrite history with blood, sweat, and intelligence. Over the next few days, I played the role of the loving wife. Dinners, outings, photos at sunset. Meanwhile, every second that Rodrigo left his cell phone unattended was a second of gathering information. Images, screenshots, files. I saved everything. With each step, the plan became clearer. And then, on the penultimate day of the trip, Helena sent a message. "If she hasn't left yet, she may need a push. Time to activate Plan B." I smiled. "Ah, Donna Helena. You have no idea what a real Plan B is." And in my suitcase, next to my swimsuits, I had already packed what would be the trigger for her personal hell. But the explosion had to happen in the right place, and at the right time. And that moment was very close. When we returned from our honeymoon, the false truce between Rodrigo and me was still in place. In his eyes, and in the eyes of the world, we were a couple trying to reconcile. But inside, I was erupting. Every forced kiss, every rehearsed touch was a reminder. I wasn't there for love. I was there for justice. As soon as we set foot in São Paulo, I went back to the journalist. I took the dossier. Conversations, audio recordings, the financial trail that connected Helena to at least 3 shell companies that made absurd transactions for non-existent services. The journalist's eyes widened. She said it was a gold mine. "If we can get the original contracts, we have enough material to open a formal investigation," she explained. And that's when I knew what I had to do. Break into the Queen's Temple. The Montero Mansion. Helena used to go out every Wednesday to play bridge with a group of high society ladies. Rodrigo came home from work after 8. That gave me a window of almost 5 hours. It was more than enough. I pretended I wanted to visit the mansion's garden. She loved showing off her orchids. And the day before my visit, I installed a small audio recorder under the office desk, disguised as an old router. On Wednesday, I went there with a smile on my face and a hidden camera in the button of my blouse. "I'm glad you decided to come, Livia," she said with that superior air. "Maybe you're maturing." Little did she know that, That same morning, I had already scheduled an appointment with the family accountant, using a fake name, pretending to be interested in counseling for couples in a stable relationship. I left her house with a photocopy of a folder labeled Confidential Contracts, Domus 2017 to 2021. In the office recording, Helena said to an employee, "Change the name on the note. Use the Costa and Nunes CNPJ. These amounts cannot appear linked to my name. You know what you have to do." Boom. That was all I needed. But I didn't want to just hand her over to the authorities. No, I wanted to do it in public, like she did to me. Meanwhile, I kept Rodrigo close by. He still believed that our relationship could be saved. It was sad, but useful. I asked him to take me to a charity dinner at the company where his mother was chair of the board. I said I wanted to try to start over with her, in front of her colleagues. To show that we're civilized. He thought it was nice, romantic even. Deep down, it would be the stage. While he was picking out a new dress for me, I handed over all the information to the journalist who swore, "The story will be published live on the night of the event. It will be national headlines." The night before the dinner, I sent a box to Helena's house. Inside was a copy of my wedding dress, dirty, torn, crumpled, and a note. "This was my beginning. You tried to destroy it. Now you'll watch its end from the front row." She freaked out. She called Rodrigo, screaming that someone had broken into the house, that woman was a threat. But he, in denial, thought it was just drama. "Mom, stop it. She just wants to make peace." Peace? Helena had no idea of the war that was about to break out in the middle of the hall, with the press present, the shareholders gathered, and all eyes on the infallible matriarch of the Montero family. And the most ironic thing? She gave me the microphone. The five-star hotel ballroom was impeccable that night. Red carpet, waiters serving champagne on silver trays, and press cameras already in position. After all, it was a charity event hosted by the Montero Foundation in support of education for at-risk youth. Ironically appropriate, I thought. Rodrigo accompanied me, holding my hand. He seemed hopeful. I was focused. In the elevator mirror, I looked at my reflection and smiled. I was wearing a dark red, elegant dress with a subtle neckline. My hair was up. My eyes were defined. But what shone brightest on me that night wasn't my makeup. It was the plan that was about to reach its climax. Helena looked stunning. She wore a shiny black dress and a diamond choker. She greeted the guests with a controlled smile and short phrases. But there was something in her eyes. A slight tremor. She knew. She felt it. She sensed that something wasn't right. I made a point of going over to her. "Dear mother-in-law," I whispered, bringing my face close to hers. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here today. It really means a lot." She didn't answer right away. She just squeezed my arm hard enough to leave a mark. "I'll destroy you before you try to scratch me, girl," she hissed through clenched teeth. Too late, I smiled. Dinner began. Formal speeches, institutional videos, polite applause. The hall felt like an elite bubble, where everything was perfect and no one got their hands dirty. But at 9:42 p.m., a buzz began near the entrance. One of the journalists whispered to another, pointing to their cell phones. The story was out. On the big screen on stage, where a slideshow of the foundation's campaigns had been playing, the headline appeared in large letters. "$1 million money laundering schemes involve Helena Montero, president of charitable foundation." And just below, documents, audio recordings, and files reveal a network of shell companies linked to the family. The room froze. Helena turned pale. Rodrigo dropped his fork. Some guests hurriedly grabbed their cell phones. Others began to discreetly get up. The master of ceremonies tried to intervene, but there was no time. The journalist, whom I had invited as a longtime friend, stood up and took the microphone. "Good evening. I apologize for the interruption, but as an investigative journalist, I have a duty to make public what has been kept secret for too long. Society has a right to the truth, even if it involves powerful names." And she began to read the excerpts. The fraudulent contracts, the audio recordings, the fake receipts, the straw men, the use of public funds embezzled through a front NGO. Helena stood up. She tried to grab the microphone, but the journalist stood her ground. "We have the evidence, and it's all ready with the public prosecutor's office." Absolute silence. Rodrigo looked at his mother as if he were seeing her for the first time. "This is absurd," she shouted. "This evidence is forged. She did it. That girl is a jealous sociopath." Everyone turned to me, And that's when I picked up the other microphone, the one that had been left on the podium for special guests. I walked calmly to the center of the stage. My heart was racing, but my voice came out steady. I was humiliated in front of everyone, at my wedding, in front of the cameras, the guests, my mother, and she, my mother-in-law, was responsible. She made up lies about my background, distorted facts, destroyed my image. But while she treated me like trash, I was watching, I was recording, I was putting together the real story. And that story ended here. People applauded, few at first, then more, then everyone. Rodrigo remained motionless, bewildered. Helena collapsed. She was taken out of the hall screaming, calling her lawyer, saying it was a setup, that I was a criminal. But there, no one listened to her anymore. The next morning, the headlines multiplied. Fall of Queen Montero. Vengeful bride exposes corruption at gala event. Helena's son leaves company after scandal. But the best part was seeing the video of the speech go viral. Millions of views. People from all over Brazil writing to me, calling me a heroine, a warrior, a woman who didn't bow her head. But the last piece was still missing. Rodrigo. The whole of Brazil already knew my name, not as the demoralized bride, but as the woman who dismantled an empire of lies with elegance, intelligence, and courage. But while social media celebrated my bravery, there was an unfinished chapter in my story. Rodrigo. He had been complicit. Even without acting directly, his silence at the altar condemned me more than any words from his mother. And that still weighed on my chest like a thorn stuck in my side. After the scandal, he disappeared for a few days. He asked to be removed from the company, citing emotional instability. And although he wasn't directly involved in his mother's schemes, his reputation was tarnished by association and by omission. But I knew he would come to me, and he did. He knocked on the door of my small apartment on a cold Tuesday night, with dark circles under his eyes, red eyes, and a bouquet of white lilies in his hands. The flowers I had chosen for our wedding, which his mother had changed at the last minute. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice trembling. I let him in. He sat down on the same sofa where I had cried alone for nights on end. He looked around as if seeing for the first time the home of the woman he claimed to love. I had no idea nor what she was doing, I swear. "You did," I replied. "You just chose not to see, because seeing would have required choosing." He lowered his eyes. He had no arguments. "I saw the video," he continued. "I saw everything. Everyone saw it. You were incredible, courageous. And I felt so small, so cowardly." Silence. Then he knelt in front of me, as he had done when he proposed, but with a completely different look in his eyes. "I didn't come to apologize. I came to ask you for a second chance, not as a husband, not as a partner, but as someone who wants to be worthy of the woman you are." That broke me. Inside, a part of me, still hurt, still human, wanted to believe he was being sincere, that the sweet boy I met in the beginning was still there, hidden under the layers of a man shaped by a manipulative mother. But the woman in me, the woman who was reborn from the mud, knew that forgiveness is not forgetting, and that no love survives where there is cowardice. You didn't defend me, Rodrigo, when I needed you most. When she exposed me as human trash in front of your friends, your family, you did nothing. I was afraid, he whispered. And I had courage. And that's why I won. He cried, really cried. For the first time, I saw sincere tears in the eyes of a man who no longer knew where he belonged. And what do I do now? You rebuild. Alone, far away from me. He got up. He didn't argue. He just nodded, as if he finally understood that he had lost more than a woman. He had lost a chance to become a better person. The next morning, an official statement was released. Rodrigo Montero is stepping down as president of Montero and Hanharia and publicly declaring his support for the investigations against his mother, Helena Montero. My silence has cost me more than any scandal. The statement reverberated, but it was too late. The Montero name, for decades a symbol of status, was now synonymous with fraud. Helena was summoned to testify. She tried to appeal. She tried to sue the journalist. She tried to sue me. But no legal maneuver could overturn the evidence. The foundation was closed. The shell companies were blocked. Accounts were frozen. Partners abandoned ship. And the powerful matriarch, once a guest of honor in high society, was now ignored even by her own employees. And me? I continued my work as an architect, now with a busy schedule of requests from companies that wanted to be associated with my image. I was called to give interviews and lectures. I received letters from women who had gone through similar stories. I was no longer just a survivor. I was a symbol of resistance. But even so, it wasn't easy. The trauma haunted me for months. Recurring dreams about the altar, the judgmental stares, my mother crying. Humiliation doesn't fade like a wine stain on white fabric. It leaves a scar. But what I did gave me peace. And what came next would be the culmination of my journey, and perhaps the beginning of something new. The case against Helena Montero unfolded with unusual speed. The public prosecutor's office, pressured by media coverage and the overwhelming amount of evidence, filed formal charges of tax evasion, money laundering, ideological falsehood, and embezzlement of public funds in less than 3 weeks. The woman who once gave interviews wearing pearls and with her nose in the air was now hiding behind lawyers who were trying to negotiate deals that the state did not want to grant. And the truth is that she was not prepared to be ordinary. Helena had been revered for decades. She was the guest of honor at all social events, a columnist, a board chair, and patron of charitable institutions, and all of that came crashing down like a house of cards. The first consequences came from the press. Major weekly magazines splashed her image on their covers with headlines such as "The Queen of Deception," "From Throne to Cell," "The Fall of Helena Montero," "The Bride Who Unmasked the Family Mafia." She locked herself in her mansion. She rarely left, and when she did, she was always booed. On one of her rare appearances, red paint was thrown at her car, symbolizing the blood of those she ran over. Her bridge friends? They disappeared. Her business partners? They withdrew their names from the companies. Donations to the foundation? Cut off. The Montero surname? It became a burden, even for Rodrigo. The court ordered the freezing of assets. 2 luxury apartments and a house in Campos de Jordão were put up for sale by the courts. Helena tried to appeal, but there was no way to justify the origin of the funds without incriminating herself further. In the most symbolic hearing of the trial, she tried to maintain her composure. She arrived in modest clothes, her hair tied back, wearing light makeup, but her eyes were vacant, empty, lifeless. She was not arrested immediately. As she was a first-time offender and her age weighed in her favor, she was able to remain free until sentencing. But her freedom was only formal, because the world she knew died. The cruelest part? No one defended her, not even Rodrigo. After our last meeting, he disappeared from the spotlight. He moved to the countryside. I heard he started a small consulting firm and began giving lectures on corporate ethics. Ironic? Perhaps. But deep down, I believe he finally understood the role he played and wanted to start over. As for me, my life blossomed. The journalist I collaborated with won a national award for investigative reporting. She invited me to accompany her to the awards ceremony. I went. I wore a simple dress, a firm smile, and a peaceful look. From the stage, she called me a key player in the fight against an empire of appearances. The audience gave her a standing ovation. On the way out, I met a woman who approached me and held my hands tightly. "You gave me the courage to break out of the cycle that had trapped me for years," she said. "Seeing you stand up to that woman made me believe in justice again." That was more valuable than any legal victory. But one last piece still needed to be put in place. Months later, I received a subpoena to appear as a witness in a new phase of the trial, now concerning the misuse of public funds through the Montero Foundation. This time, Helena would not escape a prison sentence. When I entered the courtroom, she was sitting with her head down, discreetly handcuffed. Thin, dejected, modestly dressed, but still haughty. When our eyes met, there was no more hatred. There was fear. And something even more powerful. Recognition. She knew me now. Not as the poor fiancée, not as the opportunist, but as the woman who destroyed what she had built with manipulation and cruelty. And I didn't have to say a word. My silence was the tomb of her arrogance. The judge read the sentence: 5 years in semi-open prison. And in front of everyone, Helena Montero was led away from the courtroom and from the society that had once idolized her. Justice had been served, but the real victory was yet to come. Months have passed since the day I saw Helena Montero leave that courtroom in handcuffs. Since then, I haven't needed to dress her up in my memory anymore. She has become just that, the past. A woman who believed the world was hers to control, and who destroyed herself by underestimating the wrong woman. But the curious thing about revenge is that it doesn't bring immediate relief. It doesn't heal. It liberates. And it was that freedom that I began to explore. I opened my own architecture firm. Small at first, yes, but with identity. I brought the sensitivity that life had given me into every project. I got clients of all kinds, many of them, interestingly, women who felt invisible in other offices. Here, they found their voice. My mom became my informal partner. She sewed curtains for my first projects and said, smiling, "If Helena knew that you learned to resist from me, she would have given up before she even started." I laughed. And so did she, for the first time in a long time. Social media turned me into a role model, not only as an architect, but as an example of resilience and courage. I received invitations to write, speak, and represent. Each one was a stone removed from the path that had once seemed impossible to walk. As for Rodrigo, he moved on with his life. We spoke only once after the trial, by email. You were right. I hid myself away. But thank you for showing me what I could have been, and for forcing me to be better, even if far away from you. I wish you peace. I replied with a simple sentence. The truth always finds its way. Take good care of it, wherever you are. And that was it. There was no more hurt. There was no more room for ghosts. Over time, I understood that my story wasn't just about revenge. It was about winning back. About taking power away from those who diminish us, and giving ourselves back the right to exist with pride. I started walking down the street without lowering my head. I entered places that had once been hostile with my chin held high. And most importantly, I looked in the mirror and saw the woman that no one could erase. Today, I have peace. I have purpose. And I have strength. Not because I got revenge, but because I survived what they swore would destroy me. Helena sabotaged me on the most important day of my life. But in doing so, she gave me something precious, the spark that ignited my transformation. And the revenge I planned on my honeymoon, that was just the beginning of my rebirth. Because when a woman is reborn, the whole world trembles.